Welcome into Basketball by Association. This is the association of all things basketball. That's right, we're talking Australian basketball today.
I sure hope not.
Well, we better be. Those are the top draft picks coming from that country, I think. So we better start. We better start thinking about them eventually.
Touche.
Arky, Shea here. That's Joel C. Cordes. Joel, I really only have one question to start off this whole podcast since we've last chatted, and you are the perfect man to give me the answer. Are you ready for this question?
I think I know what it's going to be, but I'll brace myself anyway.
Okay, all right, then let me know if this was it. If Karl Anthony Towns is going to be out with a surgery, why would Anthony Edwards knock his own head purposefully against the backboard and rim in an attempt to save a silly basket in a game against the Indiana Pacers? What say you, Mr. Cordes? Because this smells like sabotage.
Yeah. Ant took a hard fall on that block, but that was the second hard fall he had taken like that in that game. He also was out after the first, I think it was 10 seconds of the game, maybe 7 seconds, because he rolled his ankle. So there was 3 different moments in that game against the Indiana Pacers where you're looking at this going, please, no. And somehow he bounces back. But yeah, dangerous, couple of sequences for Edwards, the player, and then also for the Wolves' chances, because obviously, as much as it hurts to lose Karl Anthony Towns, and we can talk about that, to lose Anthony Edwards would be catastrophic. And he is a young kid, and you're seeing that fire that it's been rumbling around all season there, and it sounded like crass wishful thinking hyperbole at the beginning, some Kobe comparisons, even some MJ comparisons. It's partly the position he plays, it's the body type he has, it's the game he has, but there's also this drive on both ends, offensively and defensively, and a ultra competitiveness that continues to grow and develop, and people are beginning to talk about that outside of Minnesota. And yeah, it's way too premature, but you're seeing some traits there that are definitely reminiscent.
He said last night after the game, like he doesn't think he ever jumped that high in his life. And if the backboard wasn't there and the rim wasn't there, which was where he first hit his head, I'm not sure if he ever stops floating in the air. That was like, did you see how he just kept going? Like it just kept going up and up. I don't know. It was kind of magical in a way. Mm-hmm. That was some elite athleticism there from Anthony Edwards. So anyway, your team seems to be still in first place. Is that all right with you?
For now, I mean, half a game. The loss
half a game counts. If the whole season in the West has been half a game or a game here or there.
That is absolutely true. And Minnesota has held that number 1 spot for almost the entire duration. I think Oklahoma City was in first place for like 1 or 2 days, and Denver was there for a little teeny bit too.
We're 63 games in. The season's near. We're March. This season's close to done.
Yeah, we got 19 games to go.
And Minnesota has been out the gate hot and not a lilting flower like out there. Now, it's been pretty impressive to see this team after what they started with 2 years ago, where it seemed like they were on the ascend. A little bit of a back to earth sort of a year last year, and now this year to sort of just catapult up and just sort of stay in the top spot. Yeah, you still have to deal with Denver because they're the champs and stuff like. You still got tough teams out there that you're gonna have to deal with, but like, come on, that's really impressive for this Minnesota team with all the sort of what we thought could be individual player issues as far as like how they saw the game and if they took it seriously, so on and so forth. It's been kind of a really nice thing to see them do this year.
The mantra from training camp was to be ultra professional this year. It was to take all of those games seriously. They struggled in their first 3 games. I think they lost the first 2 out of 3 this season, including to a Toronto team in Toronto that they had no business losing that game to. They also allowed Trae Young against the Atlanta Hawks, another not bottom-feeding team, but sub-500 team. In those first couple, Trae Young went bonkers. DeJounte Murray went bonkers. And they blew a huge lead to the Hawks. So there was the mantra, and then there was seeing it not work early on that a lot of the players and the coaching staff have talked about as the wake-up call to make those adjustments, and they really have been locked in most of the year here, with a couple of exceptions. And I think the couple of times that they have not been locked into where they should have been, those have been close games that they've lost. So you really do see that difference with this group. And the loss of Karl Anthony Towns is big. I mean, second leading scorer, but I think also as the floor stretcher, he has been the leading assist guy to Rudy Gobert all season. So think about that for a second. It's not Mike Conley. It's not Anthony Edwards. It's not Kyle Anderson. It's Karl Anthony Towns playing the co-center position, has been the leading assist guy to set up Rudy Gobert, who needs to be set up if he's going to get anything besides garbage buckets. So it is a big loss for them. I'm not exactly sure. Right now, they've plugged Kyle Anderson into the starting lineup and they signed TJ Warren off the waiver wire. TJ Warren has been around the block. He's a veteran who can score a little bit, but has dealt with injury issues his whole career. I would kind of like to see them give Luka Garza some run. You know, Iowa's finest. He has shown in the G League that he is a 25, 30 point per game scorer. Against that competition, he has shown that in limited minutes, he can come in and get 8 to 10 points in just, again, a couple of minutes flat. The guy can score. He's not a good defender, though. He may not be ever an NBA defender. That kind of sounds like Karl Anthony Towns, though. You have another big in Garza who has some range. And again, I'm not in practice every day with the Wolves. I don't see what the dynamic is with him with starting guys or whatever. So I'm sure Chris Finch has a reason for not doing this. But if I was coaching the Wolves, I give Garza a look here with 19 games left to go as a limited minute starter. All he's got to do is come in, knock down some shots, continue spacing the floor for that group. You keep the second unit intact instead of bringing Kyle Anderson into the starting lineup. You keep that second unit together and they can play increased minutes. We're going to see more of Naz Reid, which is a great thing for the Wolves. He is a starting caliber player, but it works best to have him in that second unit where you have a designated scorer. A little more Kyle Anderson, a little more Nickeil Alexander-Walker, maybe some TJ Warren in the mix. That's all fine. But we'll see. Right now, they're going to go with their veterans instead, and I get it as you're in the playoff hunt. I do think that Garza should get a look here at some point.
I think that is okay with where you're saying that at this point. I defer you with you've watched this Minnesota team a lot more than I do. So
I'll just say this. They can't rely on Anthony Edwards to score 44 points every game to get knocked down out of the ceiling, 2-3 times during that game and landing on his back, on his hip, hitting his head against the backboard, all that stuff. That's not going to be sustainable. As much as Anthony Edwards in his young superhero body and mindset thinks that it is, that's probably not a recipe for success.
Yeah, but that's the kind of stuff that takes you from level 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 in the greater public's mind. When you talk about what Ja Morant did, the kind of plays that people know him for is not just being a really good scorer and playing some defense. They know him for just this crazy athleticism, and that's sort of what elevated him. And I think that's sort of what you sort of
but where is he now? He's hurt. Where's Derrick Rose now? Where are those guys off that uber athleticism and that reckless abandon doing unsustainable things? Yes, it captured the imagination, and now it's a could have been instead of still is, although Morant hopefully can come back and recapture that. But
yeah, well, some of that's Morant, John Morant flashing around pistols, so it's not all injuries. Speaking of hot teams, how about the Milwaukee Buckaroos, huh? Since the All-Star break, 6-1, and but now they are on a 1-game losing streak. They're ice cold. So all the grief that we gave to Doc Rivers and this Milwaukee Bucks team going into the All-Star break for, making a change that we didn't necessarily see as necessary. Still don't. I'm not going to change my mind that bringing Doc Rivers was necessary at that point. But they've righted the ship some, including right out the All-Star break, beating your Minnesota Timberwolves. But they've got good wins since then. They've beaten Philadelphia, of course. They beat Charlotte twice in a row, which is
is that a good win?
Well, they also beat the Clippers, who are playing really good basketball, and Golden State as one of the team that just beat them recently, beat the brakes off of them actually a couple nights ago.
35-point loss. Yuck.
It's pretty tough. But they do have still what is a I would say a fairly difficult next part of the schedule coming up. I wanted to briefly talk about Milwaukee because I don't think there's really anything new about Milwaukee other than their coach, and he's not new. I think I'm okay with move on to the next topic if you sort of agree with me that really we're just going to judge this team in the playoffs with Doc Rivers, right?
It has to be, although you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference and the Bucks are sitting in second, but they're only a half game ahead of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who were really, really hot just like a week or two ago, and now are 5-5 in their last 10. And you called this, Arky, Shea. I want to give you a little bit of dap. The Orlando Magic, hot here over their last 10 games. And you said, looking at that schedule coming out of the All-Star break, they were the team you thought was going to be able to capitalize and really bounce on that, and they are. So Milwaukee is not going to catch Boston down the stretch, but you don't want to see them lose to a Cavaliers team that, as good as the Cavs are, we have to still claim and believe that the Bucks are the better team. We have to still believe that the Bucks are the better team than the Magic. So it would be a massive disappointment to lose out on that second or even that third seed to either of those teams at this point. But yes, by and large, it still is going to come down to the playoffs. Chris Middleton remains in and out of the lineup, available some games and then not others, and you just wonder whether he's going to ever be fully healthy this season. And that's a big deal for them because not only as a shot maker, which they have some of, but as a guy who can hold his own defensively, which the Bucks have been short on all year, even with the changes that Doc Rivers has made, and they've become a much better defensive team under Rivers' scheme. And Rivers' teams have always defended pretty well. We'll give him credit for that. They're shoring up that defense, but they're going to need Chris Middleton if they're going to do anything in the playoffs, and they're going to need a relatively healthy one. So there's a lot of question marks surrounding this team, whether it's the coaching staff, whether it's the first opportunity that we'll see of Dame Lillard and Giannis in a playoff series together and how that's going to go. You have a new shooting guard in Malik Beasley, who's been hot and cold all year, as is usual with Malik, and they're down defenders. Jay Crowder is real, and Patrick Beverley, I guess, at this point, but both of those guys are on the tail end of their career. So a lot of talent there, puncher's chance, but you're right. It's going to come down to you can't lose to the Miami Heat in the first round like they did last year. You cannot get upset. You better be showing up in the Eastern Conference Finals, and you better be giving a good account of yourself there in an Eastern Conference Finals, much less going to the NBA Finals.
Does it count, though, if he goes up 3-1 and still loses the series? That's a good accounting. Like, you would make it go to 7.
If it happens again, you
fire him on the spot. You
fire him on the spot and rehire Adrian Griffin and give him a training camp with this team and just go, yep, we done screwed up, Ron. We done screwed up.
Speaking of that defense, on that same point, of the 7 games, they've allowed teams under 100 points 4 times. Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, 2 were Charlotte and 1 was Chicago. But 1 was Philadelphia. Minus
Joel Embiid, but yes, point taken. The defense has looked statistically better so far.
That's all that matters. It's the stats. The analytics is what's going to get us.
I mean, this next run, though, you look down the list. They got the Lakers coming up today. They've got the Clippers after that. The Kings, the Sixers, the Suns, the Celtics, the Nets. That might be their only, quote unquote easier game here for a while, but the Nets aren't terrible. Oklahoma City after that, back to the Lakers, then the Pelicans, and then you finally get Atlanta, Washington, Memphis, Toronto for a little bit of a respite before down the stretch you get the Knicks, who should be healthy by that. By that point, by that point the Knicks should be healthy. Then you get Boston, Orlando, Oklahoma City, and Orlando again. This is not an easy schedule to round things out for the Bucks.
No, they won't be in second by the end of the year. I don't think they will be. I think, and we'll talk about more in just a minute. Let's stay on teams that are hot. Not the Celtics. Screw those guys. But
although they did lose to the Nuggets beat them last night.
The Nuggets swept them this year. If anybody that's been able to beat Boston, it's literally been only the Nuggets. It feels like this year. Mm-hmm. Orlando, just briefly want to mention that, as you say, I did call. I was sort of looking at the schedule, what this sort of team looks like and what they could take advantage of. They still had to take advantage of it. They're 7-1 out the All-Star break. So they've done really, really nicely for themselves, taking care of the spots that they need to be taken care of. And as you mentioned, they're a half game up on my Knicks for that last home spot here for the to get into the tournament, and or not to the whole big giant tournament. I think I kind of want to believe in Orlando. Like I did not feel like that at the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this schedule's made me want to believe in it, but it's a lot like when we were talking about Dallas early on in the season, where like their schedule was super favorable to them, and we didn't know whether like that team was that much better than everyone else, or the teams they were playing were actually just really bad. It turns out it was a little bit of both in that case. But I think this Orlando team is like a win around kind of team this year. I kind of really want to believe in them.
Here's why I think you can believe in them is that as a young developing team, they're sitting third right now in defensive rating and points allowed. Minnesota's number one and has been number one all year by a good 3-point margin over everybody else, and that's a huge margin
Just
in
brag
today's
that all
NBA.
out. Just stretch all out that brag, huh?
Yeah, Cleveland is second, but Orlando is tied with them for second. Right behind them are the Knicks, who have that defensive reputation, the Celtics, the Heat, who have that defensive reputation, the Nuggets, the Pelicans. Then you get the outlier, which is the Memphis Grizzlies. They got to be good at something this year, so they've been okay at points allowed. And then the Clippers. So you're talking of those 10 teams, 9 being pretty darn legit overall, and Orlando being in company as part of those 9. So that's why I think you can believe in them, again, because we are 63 games into the season. This is a track record now. Certainly that youth could come back, and you'll see the limitations of that in a tough playoff series on the offensive end.
Yeah, they're not going to go deep. Young teams just,
No.
for the most part, go deep. They'll have to take their lumps, but it doesn't keep them from winning a round.
Yeah, and it doesn't keep them from potentially snagging home court advantage, which, as a young team that has been sitting either on the play-in bubble and getting swept year after year that they actually get in, or not even being close to getting in, this would be a massive step forward in what seems like it's been a 20-year rebuild in Orlando.
It does kind of feel like, well, what have we seen since Shaq? We saw a little bit of Dwight Howard, and we've seen...
Yeah, they made the final, so I'm talking since then.
No, what I'm saying, like what we've seen overall sort of since that franchise it literally existed. Like, we saw Shaq, he left. Then Dwight Howard came on. They got to the finals against the Lakers. Did they get swept, or they lose in 5 in that one?
I think they lost in 5. I'm pretty sure it was 5.
And then essentially it's been, hey,
Aaron Gordon and Nick Vucevic, as a middling team. That was it.
At best, a middling at best. And we sort of will see the team like, hey, why aren't these guys better? Why isn't this a better team? So, yeah, this team, Banchero and the Wagners, like I don't want to say this because, okay, you already said it, so I'll let this slide. Mainly because there's a big matchup tonight that I don't want to jinx. But
I can't imagine who it's against.
I think it's Toronto, something like that. But outside of tonight, I find them pretty enjoyable to watch. Like I think that they are dangerous with the right matchup. And listen, who knows what if they end up getting the 4 or the 5 or the 6, somewhere around there. I don't think they fall any further than 6. I think they got the horses because the rest of that schedule is fairly doable too, from the ground that they've already made up into where they're at. It's New York, it's Indiana, but it's Brooklyn, Toronto a couple times, Charlotte, New Orleans, Sacramento, Golden State, Los Angeles, then Memphis, Portland, New Orleans, Charlotte, Chicago. Like,
that's a doable schedule.
It's a very doable schedule to maintain where they're at, or to not drop very far. Because what is the where am I at on the standings? How far are they out from just making sure that they stay 6? Because I'm fairly certain that they're not dropping beyond 6.
They're 5 games ahead of Miami and Philadelphia, who are sitting in the 6-7 spots. Indiana sitting in the 8th spot at 14. So a little bit of breathing room, but with 19 games left to go.
Oh no, no, they only have
not enough.
They're only a game and a half up on Miami.
Of Miami in the 6, yeah. Sorry, I was looking at Cleveland's numbers above that. You're right. So it's a game and a half on Miami and then 2.5 games on Indy. I was looking at the wrong people.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You know what? Now I'm not nearly as certain because those are two. Yeah, They're a half game up on the Knicks, a game and a half up on Miami and Philly, who are tied right now, or at 6-7. And Indiana is 1 game back of that. Okay, I don't know. This is going to be a tough race. Never mind. It's going to be a tough race. But they got a very doable schedule to be able to guarantee themselves one of the first 6 spots. Very, very doable. So, I don't know. We'll just sort of keep monitoring these Orlando Magic and see if we can get some Wagner magic. And, I'd like to not see Paolo Banchero because, he got a certain award in the college game that somebody from my favorite team in the college game should have gotten. That's too veiled, and I'm not going to explain it. You can go look it up on previous podcasts. We've talked about it. But let's just say
I forget though. I forget who is the guy that should have gotten it.
There is a young man that was the first pick for the Houston Rockets that should have been the first pick for the Orlando Magic. He is a young man who went to Auburn, and Paolo Banchero went to Fancy Duke. But no. So that's
you think Jabari Smith Jr. still should have gone number 1 over from what you've seen?
That's a fan. That's a fan thing. That's all I'm saying.
Oh,
look, what history does Auburn have in basketball? Right, like it's Charles Barkley and then nothing for like a long time. I think Chuck Person played in the NBA, but seriously, Charles Barkley, and that's a great thing to have. But like, it's essentially like you got a couple. Marquise Daniels played in the league for a long time. There are some guys that have kind of, I shouldn't say some, a few guys that have played in the league. And I just wanted Auburn to have a number 1 pick. Is that so much to ask, Joel? Is that so much to ask?
I mean, sort of, because in hindsight, it absolutely would have been the wrong pick. Like, I
don't care for Orlando.
There's no question now that Banchero has been the better player and that Chet Holmgren has been the better player. And it was between the 3 It was between the 3 of those guys over who it was. And I was a Jabari Smith Jr. fan too, and I still think he fits in really nicely with the Houston Rockets for what it's worth. But he's got a lot of rough edges to polish out in the game, and the Rockets, despite adding veterans this year, are sitting 6 games out of the final play-in spot. So it's been kind of a disappointment.
None of that matters. Not for that. My only singular argument literally was for the college game.
He's from Auburn, yeah.
Just to have a number 1 pick ever would have been kind of cool. So Auburn's had them in the NFL, not in the NBA. In baseball, who cares? It's like Frank Thomas and Tim Hudson and stuff. But this isn't one of those shows. Okay, another team I just wanted to briefly mention because how can you not? The Celtics, although until recently, just seem like they don't lose. They have built themselves easily the biggest lead in any of the conferences. It's at 7.5, I think, right now. I'm with the only thing I am with on the Celtics is the same as with the same I am with Doc Rivers in Milwaukee, which is, we've seen them play really well in the regular season before. We've seen them be hot at the right time at the back end of the regular season before. They have to be NBA Finals or bust. It has to be at this point.
We've seen them do that. We've seen them do that during the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum era. Like,
right.
They've been to the finals. They've gotten
there
a
is
ring.
Nothing that's acceptable with how this East looks for them than the NBA Finals. Now, I would suspect if I was a Boston Celtics fan, and that would be the worst day ever of my life if that ever happened, that it's NBA title or bust, because it's literally it's out there. If you look at the West, who's unbeatable in the West, right? If you want to look at the very best team in the NBA right now, it's probably the Celtics. So the Celtics right now going at we're early into March, have to be thinking this is NBA title or bust. Now, I'm a Knicks fan. I haven't been to the NBA Finals in forever, so it'd be cool to be NBA Finals or bust. But for the Celtics, it's a whole different mantra. It's a whole different thing. This team is win now because they've got all the pieces to be able to do it.
The best team in the Western Conference, which is the Minnesota Timberwolves, or at least has been, sitting in first place, has beaten their opponents by 6.8 points per game on average. And this is a metric that over a full season, there's a lot of NBA stat heads who will look at this one in point differential. The Oklahoma City Thunder, who've been sitting in second place for most of the season, are actually better in their differential, 7.5 points per game. The Boston Celtics, sitting in first place, 10.9 points per game is what they have beaten opponents on average. So it's not just a lot of wins. It's a lot of convincing wins. It's a lot of big wins. It is head and shoulders above the next two best teams out of that Western Conference. And the next best team in the Eastern Conference is Cleveland, sitting in 6th right now. 4.5 points per game has been their margin of victory. So, yeah, I mean, Boston is
just
head and shoulders.
Boston just beat Golden State by 52. Come on.
A fully constituted Golden State as well. Yeah, like
not the 1993 Golden State Warriors, not the Golden State Warriors without every player that they had when they had what was 2 years ago stretch. Not a really good. You know where I stand on Golden State at this point.
Yeah.
You're right. Fully constituted. The whole team was on the run. Beat their brains in. Now Cleveland did beat them by 1 right after that, and then
Denver wins at home.
They just lost to. But also Denver, I should say Boston, was at that game at the very end, obviously. So,
yeah, you're right. I mean, the expectations are there for a reason, not only because of the money spent and adding Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis and all that stuff, but because the expectations seem realistic, right? They seem very realistic based on what we've seen all season long, and the numbers are backing that up. Like, this is the team to beat.
It's maintained, just like with the teams we talked about in the West, with Oklahoma City and with Minnesota. Those teams have been at the top essentially all season long. Boston's not only been at the top, but they've been crushing it all season long. You think they would cool, and do they even have if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking at it. Yeah, this was just the second time this year they've lost 2 games in a row. Just the second time. By the way, the first time, this is our through line for this podcast. November with Minnesota and Philadelphia. So just 2 times this year have they lost 2 games in a row. They haven't lost 3 games in a row the entire season. They're the only team in the NBA that can say that. It's kind of crazy, right?
I know Minnesota has lost 2 in a row. Is it 3 times now? 4 times? So Minnesota has not lost 3 in a row all season long either. I'm looking at their schedule, but they have lost 2 in a row 4 times.
I'll count that as me being right.
You are. Just by comparison, what I mean is the best team out west is in that range, right? But still not as good as what Boston has done.
Okay, let me ask you this. If Boston and Minnesota lit it up for the Larry O'Brien in June, how many games that series go?
If Minnesota can actually get there, it's going to be because Karl Anthony Towns was healthy. They will not get there without Karl Anthony Towns. And I've been, a detractor of Towns.
You have
throughout this year because of his limitations, but he still is the guy who can score 25-30 points a game and knock down threes and set up Rudy Gobert, and he does a lot of really valuable things for them, even as the knuckleheaded plays are there sometimes. So if he's healthy, Boston probably in 6, but Minnesota has a shot if they got that far. But I'm going to say the same thing about any of the top 3 Western teams. If they get there, it's going to have been because of an absolute bloodbath to get out of the West. So you're talking about the Nuggets or the Thunder. You could maybe throw the Clippers in there, and certainly a dark horse veteran team like the Lakers could be capable of making a run again. But we'll keep it to the top 3 teams. Any of those,
that's who it is. Traditionally,
yeah, absolutely. Any of those 3 that make it to the finals will have really had to prove themselves and gain some momentum. So I give any of them a puncher's chance against Boston. But if Boston has made it that far, then they've been legit all year from wire to wire. So betting against that is just stupid. And yeah, I would say 6 games, probably against whoever they play.
I'll say this, though. What we usually think of the East as far as being the top 3 or 4 teams, and then it's a mess at the bottom. It's a mess at the very, very bottom, right? When you're talking like 10, 11, 12, that area. But of the teams that are probably going to be the final 8 playing in the tournament, it's going to be it's going to be the most demanding for whoever comes out of it that's been in a few years. Like let's see, Indiana is your 8th seed right now. I mean,
Indiana could pull an 8-1 upset over Boston. Like, it is possible. It is possible.
For sure. A healthy Philadelphia is 7, right? Well, they're not healthy now, but a Philadelphia right now is a 7. Miami's a 6. Of course, the giant New York Knicks will eventually get some players back.
New York, Miami, and Philly all need to get healthy. Like, they're all hanging around that same spot with major injury issues, but ones that theoretically can be resolved by the playoffs. You're right.
Now, I don't believe anything in Chicago or Atlanta at this point.
No.
But those other 8 teams, it's going to be tough.
Anybody's capable of winning around there. You throw in Cleveland and Orlando. We already talked about Milwaukee. Any of those 8 can win a round.
And I don't, for opposite sake, in the West, I don't feel like it's 8 deep as far as who can sort of. I think it's like 6 deep the teams that I believe in. Like, I'm not going to say anything good about the Warriors just because that you know where I am at. They're done, and it's fine. It was a historic run, and they're still battling to be able to get into the playoffs.
And now with Steph Curry and the rolled ankle, we don't know how long he's going to be out and whether that opens the door. Although I don't think Utah actually wants to catch up, and I've said that a few times. I think Golden State is locked into the play-in, but what does that mean if they've got zero momentum or Steph's not fully healthy?
Yeah, the 9-10 spots are 5.5 games up on Utah, and like you say, I don't think Utah's interested in doing any more winning at this point. They've lost 8 of the last 10. Dallas, I got nothing but lukewarm feelings about as far as being able to sort of win a round at all.
I think Dallas could win a round. They could win a round against just about anybody in the West.
Oh, you think just about anybody?
Just about anybody in the West. I think they can win a round. That doesn't mean they're going to do it, but they're one of those teams that's a big wild card because of Luka, because they're still working in an even better supporting cast now. And it's been a little bit rough since the All-Star break defensively trying to make that work. But he's got better weapons, and the Kyrie-Luka pairing has actually been more than passable this year. So I'm not going to bet against Luka.
I could see them beating the Pelicans or the Clippers, depending on what those matchups end up being. What are they separated by? They're 3.5 and 6 games back, respectively, Pelicans and Clippers.
I could see them beating the Thunder, too, and that Dallas has been there now a few times, and OKC, really hasn't. As good as the Thunder have been. Sometimes it gets weird in a playoff series when you're that young.
But I tell you what, that's going to be a tough place to go play. That's going to be an insane place it's good during the season. It's a completely different place in the playoffs. And I don't know if there's another arena that's that really good in the regular season. It can be. And it's just off the wall insane during the playoff. That's why, I love to sort of put the volume on as loud as possible, really only for OKC home games that are important. I really don't like to listen to commentary, but the weird thing is some of these broadcasts like to put the commentators so much louder over the crowd, and that's not what I'm not there for the commentators, to be honest with you. I'm not. I'm looking to go see Shea Gilgeous-Alexander make the crowd go nuts. I'm looking for a Dort sighting. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want. Okay, I wanted to ask you about one other thing. If you got a minute, Well,
before we take that minute, you were talking about teams in the Western Conference that you didn't really believe in. I don't think any of us truly believe the Kings are a threat this year, which is unfortunate. But people have seen them coming.
2 years ago, I thought that was a chance to sneak up on people, and then they ran right into the Golden State.
Can they win a round? Maybe, but you're really talking a huge series, and it would be an upset. Phoenix, if they ever get healthy.
Just name the one team, just one, that you think Sacramento could be if they were matched up against.
That Sacramento could beat.
Yes.
I think any of the top 3 teams in the Western Conference can be beat. I think the least likely team to get beat is actually Denver, and that's because of the championship pedigree.
Yeah.
Minnesota has not been under that type of pressure yet. They've got the Towns question. Oklahoma City has the youth issue. So I think any of the top 3 can be beat, but Sacramento, again, it would be a massive upset to do that. Sacramento's talented. They've got good players. They've got good coaching. They've been a decent team all year. New Orleans is capable of winning a series against anybody. Phoenix, if fully healthy, could do it. But when has Phoenix been fully healthy? You know,
I think the only team that I feel like Sacramento could beat is New Orleans right now. And I don't even believe that fully. Like, but I believe that's probably the only one that I would be like, okay, this probably be a pretty long series. It could be a long series. But I also see New Orleans winning that in 5 games. So,
mm-hmm.
All right. Sorry, I interrupted you with another question for you.
No, I mean, it was just saying I agree with you that the Eastern Conference is tougher. You know, at top 8, I think the West will still be tough-ish. But you're right. There are some teams in those bottom 4. And really, if you throw in the Warriors and the Lakers, the bottom 6, where you go, yeah, they could be capable of winning a round. I can see it. I can see how it could happen. But I don't really feel like threatened badly by any of those teams if you face them. You're like, we should beat them. And if they don't, then we had a terrible series and they had a great one. In the Eastern Conference, you look at any of those matchups and go, we better show up to play right away on day 1 because this is going to be a dogfight in the first round. And if we go down 0-2 despite having home court advantage, we could be in a world of hurt. So I agree with you.
I can see any one of those teams getting a couple of early games at home and then feeling like that they're never going to lose again, you know, or even you know, someone like Orlando going into Boston, sneaking one of the first ones, and all of a sudden Boston doesn't know what to do with themselves. You know. Okay, last one thing I really wanted to mention because it is newsworthy, and also had sort of a rankum question for you in the same vein. Joel, we now know where the 2027 All-Star game is going to be. That's right. You may have forgotten that there is an All-Star game coming up every single year. Mm-hmm. We know where it is next year and the year after that. In fact, one of those years is in a stadium that doesn't exist right now. But 2027, we're going warm weather once more. Joel, let me ask you this. Wait, we should probably mention where they're going, where they're actually going for the.
Yes, please, because I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to that.
Well, hold on. Do you know?
Where the next 2 are?
No. Well, that was one thing I was going to ask you. But do you know? What was I going to say? Do you know? Forget it. I'll think of it anyway. So
one of them has to be the Clippers Stadium. If you're saying it's not built yet, then I would assume it's the Clippers' new.
So next year it's the sweet and tidy wherever they are for the Warriors. I don't know. Are they in San Francisco or are they in Inglewood or something?
They're in San Francisco.
No,
Inglewood.
Inglewood's the next one where you go to the house that oh god, what is his name?
Ballmer.
Yes, it's Steve Ballmer. The house that Steve Ballmer built. You know, the one that's got so many toilets. That's going to be the next year. And then you're going to Phoenix the year after that. So apparently there was a trend. I did not notice this until sort of it was pointed out in an article I was reading that there's been a little bit of a run on colder weather areas. They were in Charlotte, which is not cold, but it's East Coast during that time. Then Chicago, then Atlanta, and Cleveland, and Salt Lake City, and Indianapolis. And now we're getting some warm weather ones. So Joel, my question is, who cares about where these things are going to be? My question is, if you were to attend an All-Star game, which would be the stadium you would most want to go to the All-Star game for? And, you know, I got to do it. Mm-hmm. Which would be the stadium you would least like to go to for the All-Star game? Remember, you have to go.
Mm-hmm. I really would like to see the Kings Arena, Golden One Center.
Really?
I've heard, and I've never been there, but I've heard from a lot of people that is the state of the art gold standard as far as buildings go. For somebody else, then I the worst one, it's probably got to be somewhere nondescript. I think the easy one that first comes to mind for me would be Washington. First of all, because there's no real history in that building. They might not even be in that building. Now they're in the land fight with whether they're moving to Virginia or not and whether they're going to get a stadium approved over there. So obviously it's an older building. Obviously people are wanting to move out of that one and maybe even move out of the district, which that I don't agree with. But yeah, I would think I would want to see Sacramento. There's a lot of other interesting buildings too, but Sacramento's the one that I keep hearing from people who have been, where it's the place to be.
Do you know Sacramento's never hosted?
That is surprising, but not surprising.
There are 4 cities that have never hosted. Can you name the other 3?
Well, we know Minneapolis has hosted one.
Mm-hmm.
Has Milwaukee ever hosted one?
Milwaukee has hosted one.
Okay.
Let me find that year. I have that up here in front of me. Milwaukee.
Has Washington ever hosted one?
Washington has hosted one.
That's ridiculous. I would think
Milwaukee hosted in 1977.
Oh, okay.
That counts, right?
Yeah, back when the Midwest was cool.
First of all, Julius Erving was the MVP of that game. Let's just relax.
Oklahoma City can't have hosted one, right? They got to be on the list.
Oklahoma City is one of those. That's
all
right.
That would make sense.
Oklahoma City is not. Neither has who do we just
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City has hosted one. They just recently hosted one.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yep.
That was like 2023, last year. 2 years ago. No, last year. This year. I still say
You're
this
right.
year.
You're right. I don't know. Since I'll say I get one more guess. I'll go with either Toronto or Portland.
Portland is one of them. Portland is one of them. So now you got one more to get. I'll give you a hint. It's in the South.
Then it wasn't Toronto. All right.
Toronto is not in the South. That's right.
You would think that New Orleans hasn't hosted one.
New Orleans has.
New Orleans has. I don't know. Give it to me.
Memphis.
That makes sense too. I mean, we're talking about the smallest of small markets, but there's no Sacramento's a small market, but you do have an owner who shelled out all that money for that stadium. I think it is time to get and the Kings, like Oklahoma City, have had a long reputation of being a great place to play, great fans, very invested in the team, sink or swim. Like it's time to get the Kings on that list.
I think so. So if we're going to put them in order, let's put them in order of the next ones that should get the nods, which will be at the earliest 2028.
Yeah.
By the way, these stadiums aren't getting younger. NBA. Let's go. We're both agreeing. Let's go Sacramento number 1. That should be the next one to get. Then I think Oklahoma City should be number 2.
I agree with that. Again, to reward the fan base.
Just people are just going to go to it anyway. Like it's an event, right? Like you could host it in like Argentina, and people are going to go to it locally or not.
Yeah, I can see a toss up between them and Portland. I mean, Portland's been around longer. That's also an incredibly loyal fan base.
But I can
see that one too.
Then I would go. Yeah, for me, Memphis would be last. So I think OKC, then Portland.
I agree with that list overall. I could see flip flopping Portland and OKC, but I'm fine with it. I think Memphis, unfortunately, is probably lowest on the list there.
Yeah, but they should still get it, right? It's 2024, and there's still 4 cities in the NBA that have got. Now, granted, Milwaukee's been a long time. Okay.
I agree. Let's just run through them all. Let's get them all 4 out of the way. Beginning in 2028, let's get the list cleaned up, and then if you want to throw in Milwaukee in year 5, do it.
I'm trying to think of when. So, see, 2022 is Cleveland. Before that was Atlanta, Chicago, Charlotte, Los Angeles, New Orleans, Toronto, New York. Then it was New Orleans. The Smoothie King Center did 2 in like 4 years. That's kind of wild. Houston, Orlando, Los Angeles. Oh no, that was that one of those there was something controversial happening? Like they had to was that a year that like North Carolina couldn't have a game because like they were doing something with the law and they moved it just because they passed the law like one of those weird laws. Yeah, that may have. Houston, Orlando, Los Angeles, Arlington. Oh, that's right. I don't even know why they ever did that. No, I know because it's a big giant stadium. Everyone wants to do it. What I don't want
to see them do is permanently place it in Las Vegas, because that's always been talked about as the way to do it since they put the summer league there. They're not sure if they're ever going to get an NBA team situated in Vegas. That is a risky economic bet. I know Vegas has attracted other pro sports teams over the last couple of years, but they've talked about splitting the difference of just making that kind of the center for a lot of these kind of league-wide events, that sort of thing.
I forgot they went to Paradise, Nevada for the Thomas and Mack Center in like 2007 for one of those. Yeah, you went to Paradise, Nevada over Oklahoma City, which
Paradise is Vegas. That's Vegas.
I understand. UNLV, right? That's where they are.
Yeah. That's where they do summer league.
I can't believe that. I guess I can. To do Cowboy Stadium, Vegas, both those areas don't have teams. I mean, the areas do, but both those stadiums don't host NBA teams. Before you got Portland, before you got Sacramento, like that, whatever.
Yeah, but that's disrespectful to two of your most loyal fan bases. It really is.
Not only that, but also there are governors of this league who are parts of teams who are like, why don't we get one? Like, we're literally bought into the league and bought a franchise. Why can't we have one of these teams or one of these weekends? And NBA is like, no, let's go to Los Angeles one more time.
And in the case of Sacramento's owner, bought into the league and immediately poured in just an inordinate amount of money into the stadium, into the team, like revamped them. He's done a lot to try to position the Kings as a very popular team, accessible team in India, much like the Rockets kind of positioned themselves in China in years back. So he's done a lot for the international game. It's almost disrespectful at this point not to give them a shot. Just once.
I found a note that said the NBA requires 6,000 hotel rooms in the area to be able to have the All-Star game. Nah. You don't need 6,000 hotel rooms. Sacramento hosts an entire franchise with less than 6,000. Do you really need 6,000? How many people are sitting on the court? I know you want it to be a big giant event. Go to the Marriott 10 miles out. Okay,
right.
15 miles
Sacramento's
out.
How far away from the Bay Area? Not much, right? It's not super far away.
No, just drive, Uber, whatever. Like the people that you talk about are trying to go to these games likely are having a couple of funds to be able to Uber or to be able to do whatever they need to get to the game. Come on,
or to go glamping. Just go glamping in the Sierra Nevada outside of Sacramento. They can afford that too.
That there are franchises who literally never had a chance to host it. Like Portland's not new.
That's the thing that blows my mind. Like the Blazers and the Kings, and I know the Kings have not been in Sacramento as long, but as far as franchises go, they're not original franchises, but they're now among the older generation of franchises, right? Neither of them came in with the ABA. Like
you ask anybody on the street, they're telling you the Kings were one of the original teams. They don't know. It's been so long. It's been so long, and people don't know. So what's it? Plus, they got that cool laser in the sky. Come on now. All right, that's going to do it for us. Joel, I'm sorry that you're going to have to go to the All-Star game next year. We're going to send you there.
Worst things have happened to me. It's fine.
Worst things. Have you been to an All-Star game?
I have never been to an All-Star game yet. No.
Of the ones that are coming up, which one would you most like to go to? San Francisco, Inglewood, or Phoenix?
I would like to see the Clippers' new stadium. So yeah, it'd be Inglewood.
I'd agree. Yeah, because that's the year it opens. So you're getting it opens not next season, but the season after. They're hosting the All-Star game. So it'll be kind of
cool. The Warriors Stadium is supposed to be cool. No shade on that, but you know that Steve Ballmer is going to spend a crazy amount of money, and they're going to try to do it right. It's going to be flashy.
Just to see all the toilets, I just want to see all the commodes out there. That's what I want to see. Like, how many peeing units are out there for me to look at?
Needs to be over 6,000, I would imagine.
That's right. I hope you got enough of those in your weirdo. I appreciate Steve Ballmer. I don't know if I like him, but I appreciate what he's doing. At least he cares. That's better than like James Dolan, right? So fair enough. All right, Joel C. Cortez, that's going to do it for us. You're going to say goodbye to the good people?
Yeah, goodbye, good people. You can find us on Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. If you want the audio-only version, if you want the video version of this here podcast, we are on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, do all those good things over there.
Dr. Cortez, thank you for your time.